In an earlier podcast, we heard from the farming leader Clive Bailey about the threat to farming from the inheritance tax changes introduced by Rachel Reeves, which will leave not just farms, but many small businesses with major bills. Because the Chancellor not only slashed agricultural property taxes, inheritance tax for farms, she also slashed another form of tax relief that is crucial for family businesses, which is called business property relief, or BPR. That allows company shareholders to leave business assets to family members without paying inheritance tax on them. But from April of 2026, full business relief will only apply to the first £1 million of a business's assets when a shareholder dies, and everything else will be subject to a 20% tax, which is very similar to how Rachel Reeves has changed taxes for farm owners as well. The Family Business Research Foundation says that BPR allows presently for smooth succession from one generation to the next without the need to cover a huge tax bill with cash from the company or by selling assets. It also, of course, means that investing in the business makes your assets more valuable and therefore your tax bill higher. So it can also stop asset and capital investment.
Kemi Badenoch, new leader of the Conservative Party, is trying to find dividing lines with the government. And one thing the Tories are seizing upon is this idea that the government, which is packed full of public sector, woke, college graduates, just doesn't understand what it takes to run a business. And she raised this point again at Prime Minister's questions earlier today.
Mr. Speaker, even he has to admit that they fiddled the fiscal rules. The OBR has actually said that they don't recognise where the additional growth is going to come from. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, the rise in employers' national insurance is going to be a disaster for small businesses around the country. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you about Kelly. For over 20 years, Kelly has run an after-school club business supporting 500 children and families in her borough. In 2024, her national insurance cost was about £10,000. In April, this will rise to £26,000. That is a 150% increase in costs from the budget alone. What is the Prime Minister's message to Kelly and the 500 families her small business supports if it goes under?
I would say this to Kelly. We inherited a very badly damaged economy. We inherited a £22 billion black hole, and we were not prepared to continue with the fiction. We stabilised...
Oh, Ms Lopez, I'm sure I couldn't expect better from you as a PPS as well, Prime Minister.
I would say to Kelly, we are fixing the mess that we were left. We're investing in the future of our country. I would also say to her that the Leader of the Opposition, week 2, wants all the benefits from the budget, but has no way of saying how she's going to pay for it. Same old mistake over and over again.
Mr. Speaker, he has nothing to offer except platitudes. And the fact is that they do not know what they're doing.
Kemi Badenoch there raising national insurance, which goes alongside the inheritance tax changes, carbon tax changes, the national insurance for employers changes also going up, all new costs for businesses. We're joined now by Michael Brundle. He's a fifth-generation family business owner. The family business is called FH Brundle. His steelmaking firm has been running since 1889. Michael Brundle joins us, a fifth-generation family business owner. His steelmaking firm has been running since 1889. Michael, thank you so much for joining the Daily Tea. Just kick us off. Give us a story of the Brundle family and steelmaking. We'd love to hear. Take us right back.
Yes, certainly. My great-great-grandfather started the business in 1889. He started down on the site of where the Barbican is based now, and he originally started by supplying horseshoes and packing case fittings. The horseshoes were to supply all the horses that were delivering around London before the motor car came along, and then obviously we saw quite a quick demise in the demand for horseshoes and moved on into other wire products, steel products, and have expanded through the years to where we are today, stocking just over 10,000 products and distributing across the UK into many different industries. I took the business over from my father in 2017, we've continued to grow over the years and invest in the business.
Well, congratulations. How many people do you employ, and what kind of, how is the business doing at the moment?
We employ 300 people across the UK. I have 9 different sites, 8 of them warehouses, and then a design office as well. The business has been through some tough times recently. COVID was obviously an enormous challenge to everyone in the country, and particularly businesses, depending on what sector you were in. It was harder for some than others. The construction industry wasn't too badly affected. It bounced back very quickly after the initial lockdowns, and we have done okay. But in the last year and a half, we've seen a slowdown in the construction industry. There's a lot of people struggling. Demand is very low, and we've also seen a lot of prices coming down after COVID. So it's not easy trading conditions at the moment.
So you need help rather than hindrance from the government, one would hope. I think you paid £11 million in tax last year, so you already do a lot to support the state. Michael, just take us through business property relief and why that is an issue for firms like yours.
Yeah, certainly. I think people don't quite understand how business property relief works. I've spoken to quite a few people in the last 2 weeks since the announcement, and I wouldn't have probably understood how business property relief works if I wasn't in a family business. But what it essentially does is it allows you to hand the business assets of a company down to the next generation without paying inheritance tax. And it has meant that our business has been able to survive for 5 generations. They're not personal assets; they are essential to the day-to-day operation of the business. And the removal of the business property relief means that we would have to pay a 20% inheritance tax on all our business assets, which is. It's not affordable. We've invested for 135 years in building a business up. You can't suddenly, on the death of a shareholder, a family member, just suddenly find, that sort of inheritance tax liability to pay the government without putting what is a financially sound business under incredible pressure and strain. You not only would have lost the managing director of the business, which is hard enough, but you have then put a financial strain on the business, which would be most likely lead to my family having to sell the business.
How has this affected you personally, psychologically, to know this thing is hanging over you?
It's incredible what it's done. I mean, I invest in the business year on year on year, and I am building business assets up. I'm, currently building 2 new warehouses, and I've suddenly stopped and looked at it and gone, that is an inheritance tax liability. I'm going, why would I want to continue investing in the infrastructure of the business? I'm sitting there now going, should I not just be saving money on the eventuality that I might die at some point? Ironically, I sat there and thought, well, even if I do start saving the inheritance tax when I do die, the government will take 20% of the money I've saved to try and pay the inheritance tax liability on the company. But it's transformed my thought process. I'm sitting there now where 2 weeks ago thought I had a well-run business. I'm now sitting there looking at it going, I've actually got a liability upon my death. And I'm sitting there going, do I actually want my family to have to deal with that liability, or is it better for me to sell the business now?
You see, I suspect that politicians who don't do business might not understand how important it is to people to know that they can hand the business down the generations. Is that something that you always proceeded throughout your business career assuming would be the case? And how does it feel now to think that might not be the case anymore?
All businesses, they're very fragile. They're like a pack of cards. If you're not careful, the whole thing will come crashing down. My kids, I've got 3 kids. They're not at the age where they know whether they would like to join the business. It would be amazing if it could continue for a 6th generation. So all I've done is continue to try and do the best I can to, look after the 300 people that work in the business, and I've been talking to them, the last 2 weeks, sort of explaining to those guys, it's that why would you put their jobs in a position that might not be sustainable? I've worked with them for, family business. I think have a tendency to work with people for a long time. Try and look after our teams, and I've got people that've been working for us for over 30 years. Lots that have worked for us over 20 years, and I've sat there and thought, it's not about my family. It's not about me. It's more concerned about the people in the business and jeopardising their futures.
Michael, obviously we've been seeing a lot of coverage of the effects of the agricultural property relief changes, inheritance tax changes for farmers. But for small family businesses or larger family businesses, this change is as existentially risky as it is to farmers.
The damage it will do to the UK economy and the future jobs for the next generation, it's untold. It's, if I have to sell the business, right, there is every chance that the highest offers would come from abroad. Yeah, what they have done with the removal of business property relief is actually they have devalued companies across the UK. So you sit there, everything we earn, all our profits, all our taxes, everything remains in the UK. If you have to force companies down the road of having to sell, there's every chance that a lot of that money will not be UK owned. The profits will be off into other countries, and I think it's so bad for the future generations, and it's so bad for the company. Like you alluded to, we paid £11 million in various taxes last year. I'll continue to pay those taxes year after year. I almost feel like they're killing the goose that lays the golden egg. It's we're here, and hopefully we're here to stay, but I'm not if they start removing business property relief.
An extra cost alongside business property relief has been the change in national insurance rates for employers, which Rachel Reeves insists is not a tax on employees. I just wondered, Michael, how is that affecting your business?
Well, the increase in national insurance contributions that cost us £280,000 off the bottom line 2 weeks ago. I was expecting that. We can stomach that. We can make savings. We might have to put our prices up slightly. We can cope with that. The other thing which we do, we don't pay the national minimum wage. We pay the living wage, and the Living Wage Foundation announced that their latest numbers 2 weeks ago. So not only have I just had a national insurance contribution increase, but I've also put all our payments, our salaries in line with living wage or above. So yeah, I've had an expensive month of increases for employees.
Do you think the Labour government understands that business leaders, there seems to be, I think, often in the Labour Party, as you say, Tim, often with little to zero experience of running a business or being involved in a business. Does the Labour government, Michael, you think, actually understand that good people lead businesses for good reasons, and that their values are as positive as anyone who works in the public sector? I think sometimes there's a tone with business that, well, you're just in it to make profit. You all live in big houses and drive flash cars, so therefore you're that cow that can be constantly milked.
Yeah, I really don't think they understand. I mean, I think there's many businesses out there that have been run over the years that are probably a bit like the farmers. They might be asset rich, but cash poor. And I think if you take any business that is employing people, you have got to think of the contribution they're making via national insurance, pension contributions, and it's not easy. There is, every time there is any sort of new legislation that comes in for everything, you are continually trying to adapt. I mean, you haven't even touched on the workers' rights that are going to come in and the effect that's going to have on businesses. It's hard. It's not easy on a day-to-day basis. You're juggling so many different factors, and when you have a new government that comes in and makes sort of such sweeping changes, it knocks you sideways a bit, really. But it's you almost sit there with the removal of business property relief and think, is that it? Do I really want my kids to come into something that is hard? It is difficult. You're always having to adapt to whatever market conditions are going on and whatever the government decides to do from one day to the next. So I think I don't think the Labour Party do realise how difficult it is to make ends meet. I mean, we talk about taxes. You alluded to that. We've paid £11 million in taxes. I mean, I pay £1 million worth of business rates every year. So every morning before I get up and come into work, we're £4,500 in the red. I've just having to pay for the property. That's before all your other contributions for employing everybody, and it just you hope the phones ring. You hope we take some orders. Hope we have a busy day getting our goods out on our trucks and delivering across the UK.
And Michael, would you add net zero to that list of burdens being placed on you?
Oh, net zero is big here. Yeah, it's something else which I just watch, and it becomes, it scares me slightly in what they're going to expect from businesses. There's all sorts of regulations, and is it achievable? I don't know. It just increased costs the whole time, and half of me looks at that we're all in it together. So if it's if there are sort of changes across the across the business spectrum, we all put our prices up, we all adapt together. So but it does take it takes a lot of administration. It takes your mind away from running a business.
Michael, thanks so much for giving us details there about how tough it is running a business, and it's become a lot tougher since the last budget. We really appreciate you joining the Daily Tea.
No, lovely. Thank you very much for your time.
So there you have it. Government's policies are devaluing business. That was a really strong line.
Very powerful line there, I thought.
They're harming investment because people are less sure about investing in the future. It's going to be a cost further down the line, and it's going to hit not just the families that inherit, but also the people who work for those families. This is what the government, I just think, doesn't get. Next week, this is going to become an even bigger headache for Labour because the farmers are going to be coming down to London in their tractors to protest against its policies.